Swapnil, hi, how you doing?
I'm good, Arti. Thanks a lot. Thank you for arranging this, and thank you everyone for taking a time out for this session. I hope we'll make best use of this 30 minutes we have got.
Awesome. So I'm just going to put you on the spot and have you jump right into the presentation. Yes. So please take it forward.
All right, thank you. So, of course, PCI DSS 4.0 is a huge topic. It can take anywhere around 3 hours, 4 hour long discussion if you want to get into that details. So, but yeah, I'll try to keep it short. I'll try to give you some, key insight which all of you can follow and start getting on that 4.0 journey. So, let's start with three basic questions: what, when, and how. Right. So first slide is all about what. So for everybody's benefit, I'll just brief you about PCI. I'm very sure that everybody knows it, but it is payment card industry data security standards. It is typically on all your card data, on your sensitive authentication. That's where the applicability angle comes into picture. So any entity which is storing, processing, or transmitting card information, or it can impact the security of your card information, will fall into PCI DSS requirements gamut. Now, there are multiple compliance levels defined. So it's not like that every company, irrespective of their size or their complexity of their environment, will have to fall into the same category. No, absolutely not. So all these payment card brands, the Visa, Mastercards of the world, they have gone ahead and they have created a 2, 3, 4 levels depending on whether it's merchant or it's service provider. So quickly covering it, so anybody who has more than 6 million transactions annually from the merchant's perspective or 300,000 transactions annually from service provider's perspective will require a PCI DSS annual audit by a QSA and also a quarterly ASV scan. ASV scan is an external VA which is required, and I think Vishal will be talking in detail about it. But yeah, that's the requirement from PCI perspective. All other level 2, 3, 4, typically what you need is SAQ, which is self-assessment questionnaire, and again ASV scan is kind of mandatory. Just that in case of level 4, the frequency will change, right? So this is a very high level overview of what is PCI DSS. Let's talk about when now, because PCI DSS is a standard which is going through a lot of changes. Like we started with version 1 and now we are at version 4.0. We are transitioning from version 3.2.1. So PCI is very good at it. They are understanding what are the requirements in the market from perspective of what are the new threat vectors, right? Where exactly we see that okay, these new threat vectors will identify your chinks in your armor and get that breach done. So all of this has been put together into this newest version, and there's a timeline to it. That okay, it was released in Q1 2022, and Q1 2022, and like any PCI standard, there's a transition period given to all the entities, right? Where you need to actually follow that particular transition period and make sure that okay, you are compliant to the newer version. Now that transition period is towards the later end of it. So now we have to ensure that we are compliant by 31st of March 2024. That's the dead end when the last version will get retired. One more thing, there are a few controls in PCI version 4.0 which are typically very new in nature, and hence PCI is suggesting that okay, you will get one additional year to actually go ahead and implement those controls. We don't have to worry about the timelines here. Reason being means to understand the timeline, you can actually go to PCISSC's website. They have a very nice document called Summary of Changes. There you can actually go ahead and download that document. First of all, you will get to know each and every change which is happening with 4.0 plus the timeline, whether that particular change needs to be implemented by 2024 or that will be implemented by 2025, right? So I think that when part is clear. Now let us talk about how, right? A very important part. So here I am taking reference from our age-old PDCA cycle. We all know it. We all follow it. So this is what this is a practical way to do it. I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it, but this is just one suggestion from Sprinto's side, from our side, that you can follow PDCA. Very simple. First of all, what you need to do is, first of all, you need to go ahead and download that document, Summary of Changes. understand what are the changes, identify how those changes will impact your requirements, your infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Next that you need to do is do. You need to form a team. You need to start implementing these changes and make sure that okay, these changes are as per your understanding are implemented in your organization. Then you need a third party to come in and perform a check, right? You need a compliance expert, somebody like Sprinto or your QSA company coming in, doing a gap assessment as per the latest standard and telling you that, okay, yes, you have implemented everything, but see, here are the few changes that you might have to do to be 100% compliant, right? So that's the check part of it. Then comes the act. Now, this is where you will have to follow that gap assessment report and ensure that all of these suggestions made by your compliance partner has been implemented right before the dead end, that is your 30th of March 2024. After that, you will start following the standard, as per your next audit cycle, you will go ahead and get your compliance or next certification done as per the latest version. So I hope this plan is clear. This is very simple. We can actually, go ahead and follow it, but I would suggest that we start early. It looks simple, but it will take some time. If you have started on it already, that's very good news, right? But if you have not, we have very limited time and we should start planning for it, right? Now, moving on. See, as I said, it is going to take a lot of time to explain all of these, changes. So, what I've done is I'm going to explain you a high-level objectives, which were the base of version 4.0, so that we understand at a higher level, at 40,000 feet level, that okay, what exactly is happening in this new standard. In detail, you can go and check the summary of change documents, right? So first thing which PCI wanted to do was make sure that we are creating a standard which is continue to meet the new security requirements. This is where we are again there, right? The threat vectors are changing. We have to change as per them. So a lot of technical changes are falling into this particular objective. Your multi-factor authentication, which was like, you required it only when you are doing a remote access, but now it's required for each and every access. Your password requirements have changed to 12 characters now. Your e-commerce phishing. So previously we all were aware about skimming, right? Somebody coming in and putting a device on top of your POS machine and then reading your card data. But now same thing is happening in the e-commerce world, right? People are putting skimming codes on top of your payment pages and getting that card holder information. So all these changes are part of this. This is the major chunk of your changes, and you have to study it very deeply and understand how you will implement it in your respective environment, right? Second thing is promote security as a continuous process. We all know it. We all are guilty of it. We treat PCI DSS as a one-time activity. We do it, then we forget about anything else other than ASV activities and your security testings. But we feel that okay, next year when audit is going to come, we will go ahead and review these things. But no, now there's a very clear understanding of your roles, your responsibilities, what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and who is required to do it. So there's a process that you need to define and follow it throughout the year to ensure a continuous compliance. This is a very important objective for PCI DSS this year, right? The third objective is talking all about customizability, right? So this was one of the major feedback to PCI SSC that okay, PCI DSS was a very prescriptive standard. They used to tell that okay, this is what you need to do, this is how SSL will check it, and then we will say that you are compliant. But then there were organizations who were very far ahead in terms of their risk maturity. They said that okay, fine, what you are saying to me is good, but I have better things implemented in my organization. How do I capture that in my ROC or AOC, right? So this is where they have introduced customized approach. Very big change. We'll talk about it in short, how it is different from your defined approach. But yeah, now risk assessment is playing a very important role. You have to do a targeted risk assessment, understand your risk maturity, and then decide whether you are falling into that customized approach bracket where you want to define your own controls, your own method to follow it, and or you want to actually go ahead with a defined approach, right? But now PCI DSS is flexible enough to allow innovation in payment security, right? So this is another very big change. And last one is important, not a very big change, especially it is a major change from the QSA company's perspective, because now there is a more defined approach to how we work on ROCs, how we work on AOC documents. ROC is report on compliance, AOC is attestation of compliance. Plus, AOC is a summary of your ROC. This is what you are going to share it with your vendor partners, with your customers, and so on and so forth, right? So what you need to do is, we will create these ROC AOC, and there is a separate guideline on how exactly we are going to summarize it into an AOC, right? So AOC will now be more clear, more crisp, but will provide enough information to your customers so that they go ahead and they trust you on your security best practice, and maybe sign your deal if it's pending on PCI DSS. Yeah. So that these are the top four objectives. These are the only four objectives, but all of these were kind of base for PCI to actually go ahead and make these changes. And you will see that in majorly all of these see the change requirement documents, you will find reference to this, right? Now, I'll quickly cover this as like the last thing which I want to cover, because this has been a major talking points since the PCI DSS 4.0 came out. What is customized approach? How it is different from your compensating controls, right? So I'll cover defined approach. We all know it, right? Defined approach is when an entity used to follow what is written in the standard. This is the best practice, I'll follow it. SSR knew that, okay, this is the best practice. This is the way to test it because it's also given in the guidelines. And that's how they used to test it, right? If in case there is a business requirement or technical requirement because of which you cannot meet it, there was an option to create a compensating control where SSR will help you fill a sheet, where we just need to check whether that intent is being solved or not. But now it's a paradigm shift. If in case you are a risk mature organization, you have implemented a very mature security program, you can actually redefine the control. You can actually say that, okay, this is not how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to implement it. Now, SSR will also have to work here, because they will also have to understand how exactly I'm going to test the intent of this, whether my intent of the standard is getting solved with this new customized approach. They will have to do it. They will have to. Hence, you have to work with your SSR to ensure that the customized approach is foolproof, right? So, customized approach is not easy. It is not something which you can actually say that, okay, now I have option to change the controls or change it as per my requirement. No, it's not like that. It's actually more difficult. It will go through more scrutiny. So follow it only if you have that kind of risk maturity, right? Compensating controls are not applicable in case of customized approach. Reason being, of course, you are customizing your entire approach. What is the need of a compensating control? Compensating control will only come if in case you are going for defined approach, right? So that's a quick summary of what's happening with PCI DSS. The important points I have covered. I still recommend go ahead, follow the PDCA cycle, go through that particular summary document and identify, start implementing it, right? Next thing, what you can do is you can actually onboard a consultant or expert like Sprinto. So Sprinto helps you with multiple things. So we have a strong base of ex-auditors, ex-implementation partners who understand what is happening in the compliance ecosystem. Plus, the product is providing you two benefits. First, it connects with your SaaS environment, it connects with the services that you are using, collect the evidences automatically, checks whether that evidence is passing evidence or failing evidence, tell you whether this kind of change is required, what are the remediation steps you need to take. Second, as I said, in the second objective, PCI is talking about continuous monitoring, continuous process for the entire year. This is where the Sprinto will come in, right? We will continuously monitor your entire environment, and if in case there's anything which is going haywire, we will immediately tell you that, okay, this is something which which needs your immediate attention, and we will ensure that this continuous monitoring is keeping you on path of 100% compliance throughout the year, right? So this is where our compliance expertise and automation capabilities and continuous monitoring capabilities will be able to help you. We have a lot of customers. We serve the entire gamut of industry right now. We have 650 plus active customers. A few names like JustPace and Shipsy, Zero Tabs of the world. Large compliance program, very very diverse teams, and they are using Sprinto very easily to manage their entire compliance automatically. So definitely, feel free to go to our G2 page, see our reviews, see what customers are talking about, and happy to get on a call with you to discuss this further. All right, thank you, thanks again. That's my part. I'll hand it back to Aarti and Vishal to take the discussion forward. Yeah.
Yes, Swapnil, thank you so much for your side of the session. I think Josh has one question that I think you can help solve. The Josh has asked whether the transaction amount does that include iframe tokenized transactions?
Yeah, Josh. So basically, if in case you are using an iframe and you are tokenizing the transaction, in that case, typically your PCI DSS compliance will not be applicable because you don't have direct access to card data. You are only having access to tokenized, card number, which is not going to lead to it's not encrypted data, right? You will not going to decrypt it in any way. So typically, it's not possible. So you are out of the gamut of it. But still, what I would recommend is talk to your service provider, which is providing you iframe. Understand from them that okay, what kind of access they have provided you, what kind of access eventually you will have from the card environment perspective. And if it is completely out, then you can definitely go ahead and stay out of PCI compliance perspective. All right. I hope I was able to answer the question. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Yes. All right. So, Swapnil, thanks. I'm just going to add Vishal on stage. Don't worry. If you have any more questions coming up, you can please add it to the Q&A section. The last 5 minutes will be for Q&A. So, don't. So Swapnil and Vishal will be tackling them. Vishal. Hey, Vishal.
Hi, Arti.
Everyone's ready for part two of tackling pen testing and compliance for PCI. So I'm just going to shift the slide and have you take it forward.
All right. Sure. Thank you so much, Arti. And thank you so much to Swapnil as well to kind of give us a brief overview of what changes for PCI. Right now comes down one of the very important aspect of PCI is penetration testing, right? So what is PCI penetration testing? That's the first question that comes in anybody's mind, right? So when we start off with, Arti, if you mind moving to the first slide to the next section, please. Yeah. Sorry, the next section. Yeah. So when we talk about the PCI pen test, right? So what is PCI pen test? A PCI pen test is a pen test wherein we are trying to address the requirements set forth by the PCI DSS standards to verify the security and protection of the cardholder data. Arti, you need to kind of move on to the slides, please. Yeah, the next one. Yeah, there. Thank you. Right. So then comes down the question, right? So what is the fundamental difference between a PCI pen test versus a conventional pen test that we do, right? So the fundamental difference lies in the nature, or let's say the objective of those assessments, right? So a PCI pen test is designed to validate the security around the cardholder data environment, right? That's CDE basically. Wherein the conventional pen test is more focused and inclined towards improving the overall security posture of the organization, right? And what does a cardholder data comprise of? Swapnil did briefly touch upon, but I'll just kind of reiterate that basically stores, processes, or let's say kind of updates the credit card numbers, track to data, or any data set forth by the PCI Council that needs to be protected as part of the PCI requirement, right? And there are certain types of tests which are being prescribed by the PCI, which basically aligns with network layer penetration testing, application layer penetration testing, and the network segmentation test, right? So let's quickly talk about on what are the focus areas of individual type of tests, right? So a network layer pen test basically focuses on the infrastructure level components, which are exposed to the outside world as part of the external infrastructure components, which are available towards an internal employee, I would say, like kind of maybe behind a firewall or a network perimeter defenses, that would be categorized as an internal network asset. Application layer is basically a public facing web application that is being used to exchange, collect, process information, or deliver services that connects back to the cardholder data. And then the network segmentation test in principle is more about the logical separation and isolation between the cardholder data environment and the out of scope systems, right? So when I say out of scope system, it's primarily focuses more onto the devices or the components of the network which are not part of the CDE or touches upon any data as part of the CDE, right? Moving forward, right? So there are certain, I would say, like a frequency set forth by the PCI DSS standard by itself, wherein you need to kind of assess the applications or assess the environment in terms of testing, right? So there are three broader categories. One is an annual pen test that's for external and internal network assets. annual pen test for the web applications as well. The wireless penetration testing, vulnerability scans that Swapnil talked about, is majorly reliant on the level of the merchant, right? Whether it's a level 1, level 2, level 3, or level 4 merchant. And then the network segmentation test, which is basically done on a semi-annual basis, right? So the network segmentation tests are done more frequently than the annual pen test, or let's say the annual pen test for external components, internal components, or for web application, because the probability of failure of segmentation is far more higher as compared to something breaking on part of the external perimeters. And that's why PCI prescribes it to be done on semi-annual basis, like twice in a calendar year, to ensure the logical segmentations are in place and tightened as part of the security components, right? Uh, yeah, moving forward, PCI DSS not only prescribes the components that need to be pen tested, they also dictates certain requirements that need to be managed, maintained, and addressed as part of the PCI pen test that we are doing, right? So for networks, they very specifically and heavily focus on I would say kind of incorrectly configured software, firewalls, operating system, or end of life devices, or any unsafe protocol which is available for an external attacker to gain an internal foothold or exploit the external perimeter defenses, right? Moving forward to the web application, the purpose of doing a web application penetration test is basically web applications acts as a primary target for any attacker outside the world, right? Or available in the world. And that can lead to a poorly coded web application can provide an easy path for an attacker to gain access to sensitive data like credit card information, expiry dates, right? Or any sensitive data exposure can lead to a very big reputational or a financial loss for the organization, right? And moving forward within this one, within the web application, PCI also prescribes certain type of specific attack patterns which are prominent in the world, which aligns back to the OWASP top 10 or SANS top 25, to ensure the applications are pen tested in accordance with those kind of requirements, right? Moving forward, about the wireless penetration testing, again, it's the assessment of your wireless environment, right? Are we using the secure standards? Are there weak encryption mechanisms being used, any unsupported or end of life technology being used, or unauthorized access point or rogue devices being plugged in within the environment that may pose a threat or a risk to an organization in terms of the PCI compliance perspective, right? That's about the penetration testing on the PCI side. But who need to undergo there's a very big dilemma or a question between the vendors or between the clients. Am I exposed to PCI compliance? Do I need to get a PCI pen test done? Yes, if you fall under the purview of these two brackets. Yes, if the organization store, processes, transmits any cardholder data by themselves or by leveraging help of third party or an outsourcing partners, or use segmentations within your organization to protect the cardholder data, right? In certain elements, there are questions wherein an entity which is basically outsourcing the payment operations or the management of their entire CDE outside of their network, do they fall under the purview of PCI? Yes. And do they need to kind of obtain PCI compliance standards or do undergo the assessments for PCI? Yes, absolutely. Or any situation wherein an entity has outsourced the payment environment or acts as a payment operator in between as a third party, do they still have to undergo a PCI compliance or a PCI pen test kind of requirements? Yes, absolutely, because the ultimate responsibility to ensure the account data, or let's say the cardholder data, is protected falls under the organization purview by themselves, right? Quickly moving forward, when to perform PCI penetration testing, it's, as I talked about in the previous slide, just primarily annually in terms of pen testing. But doing a network segmentation test, it relies back onto the semi-annual frequency, but again, dependent on the level of maturity, or let's say the level merchant the organization is, right? And I would say, like, kind of keeping track of time, I'll just kind of quickly move on to the last piece. Who can perform the penetration test, right? Or the PCI penetration test. So PCI standard basically set forth requirements for penetration testing to be performed by a qualified resource, right? So when they define qualified, it has to be meeting certain standards which are set forth by the PCI Council, right? And when we talk about qualified and educated or competent resource, it can be done, sorry, in-house or by an independent third-party assessor, right? So when I say in-house, it has to be an independent assessor, which is organizationally separate from the target asset or the target project that they are working on, right? And when we talk about the competence level or the qualification level set forth by the PCI Council as part of Chapter 3 in their requirement, the person have to have a common body knowledge of these certifications, right? So when they are set forth as OSCE, OSCP, CEH, even CREST registered or CREST certified pen testers as well. We at BreachLock perform or have done a lot of penetration tests in the past related to PCI compliance and have a team capable of doing that. And moving on to the last piece, that's where BreachLock's entire portfolio lies. BreachLock geographically work across 20 plus countries and have served 20 plus countries across the globe, served over 100 industries, and have done over 200K pen tests. That is inclusive of PCI DSS assessments too. So that's a quick bit on to the pen testing side of it. So I'll just take a pause here. Arti, over to you, or maybe we can just kind of quickly take questions if there are any around the penetration testing ask for or aspect of PCI.
Yes, thank you so much, Vishal. That was like well put together and also extremely informative. Yes, we do have questions right now. Yes, the first question is that does Sprinto help with continuous validation of segmentation controls? Swapnil, I see you've answered, but yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just elaborate on that. So we have a way to identify whether it's a infrastructure a person is falling into CDE or it's out of CDE. That will be tagged on Sprinto. Once that is done, we know what is the segmentation. We have access module built into it so that you can define the access and who has access to CDE, who is not having access to CDE. Plus, there are workflow setups which we have created to ensure that all these checks and controls which are required to be monitored continuously are being monitored. The evidence is being gathered so that you don't have an issue while you're facing your auditor, right? So yes, in simple, yes, we will support.
Okay. Chris, I hope that answered your question. Feel free to share any follow-ups in case you have anything. Or my colleague has also linked how to reach out to Swapnil to discuss more, so you can reach out to him on LinkedIn as well. Vishal, you have a question. How many CVEs are covered in the PCI pen test by BreachLock?
So just to understand the question better, right? So when you say CVEs, right, there are certain standards, or let's say the controls which are set forth. All the CVEs as part of this PCI requirements are covered as part of the penetration testing engagement by BreachLock, right? So if I have to simply put across, all the controls and the requirements which are mapped against the CVE are part of the PCI pen test for BreachLock. Yes.
Right, Sai, I hope that answered your question. We have also just linked how to reach out to Vishal
Mhm.
on chat, so you can reach out to him as well. If that's that, we have reached the half an hour mark, so with this we conclude the session. Thank you so much for joining in, and if you do have any other questions and you'd like to reach out to them, these experts are there to take up those queries. And we will also be sharing this presentation along with the session recording with you via email by tomorrow, so you can go back and see anything that you might have missed out during this session. As always, thank you so much for joining in, and take care and have a great day.